So you're probably wondering why we're here at Scottish Power HQ in Glasgow rather than Plug Life Studios. So the reason is I've spent the last few months ripping my hair out trying to find a service plan for a heat pump, like you would have with a gas boiler, your normal kind of monthly payment service plans there. All the companies I approached wanted me to pay one big lump sum, and some of them even wanted that money up front before they'd even come to my house and had a look at my heat pump. And then a few months ago, at Fully Charged Live Harrogate, I bumped into the Scottish Power team with their big stand there, and they had a banner on it that said, "Come and check out our heat pump service plan." And I immediately knew that is exactly what I've been after. I am signing up to this, and I am telling all of YouTube about this because there will be loads of other people in the exact same boat as me. We should point out this is a promoted video because one thing led to another when I signed up and said, oh, I've got this wee channel, Plug Live Television. So on that note, Rob McGahey, thank you for hosting us at Scottish Power HQ today.
Oh, you're very welcome.
Yeah, so I mean, first and foremost, thank you as a heat pump owner for the fact that you do this. It's sensible. It's what people who are used to gas boilers are used to in terms of monthly servicing and so on. But going back a wee bit, what got Scottish Power into the heat pump game?
Well, I suppose Scottish Power has been at the forefront of renewables for a long time now. We have 40 operational wind farms. So low carbon technologies was a natural evolution for us. In 2018, we launched our first home smart solution, which was our EV charging. And then heat pumps, solar panels and batteries just naturally followed.
Superb. So you do installations as well as servicing, don't you? So
yes.
How many have you installed so far then?
Yeah, great question. I suppose in the first 8 months of 2023, we've installed and been involved in the installation of over 900 heat pumps.
Wow.
So that's ground source and air source. The majority of those have been through our energy company obligation, which is an energy efficiency scheme that across to improve the UK housing stock. So by installing a heat pump and insulation, we're reducing emissions, reducing energy bills, and improving the quality of those people's lifestyles.
Goes without say, as a very happy heat pump owner, I can confirm. And on that note, this episode's a wee bit cart before the horse, because I was hoping to cover a bit about my heat pump, but such has been the timing of things. Of course, we're going to discuss the servicing of it today. But I've got an air source heat pump. You're saying you do ground source as well. So what is the fundamental difference in terms of installation requirements, in terms of costs, and in terms of the kind of efficiency of these units year round as well?
Yeah. So that's a big talking point. So we'll maybe only scratch the surface here. But I suppose air source heat pumps are easier for individuals to transition to low carbon heating because they're kind of lower cost for a single install. Ground source heat pumps, on the other hand, are more efficient all year round because the ground is a more constant temperature than the air around us. However, for a single house to move to ground source can be quite costly. So we at Scottish Power believe that kind of for mass deployment, heat networks and for communities, that's a good solution. But for single homeowners looking to make the switch, they can still get really, really great efficiencies, and it's a more affordable way to do that. And if you're not eligible for the eco scheme, then there's the bus grant in England and Wales, which is £5,000 for an air source heat pump. And in Scotland, the grants are even more generous through the Home Energy Scotland grant, which offers you up £7,500. Or if you're in a rural location, that can be as much as £9,000. So there really is quite generous grants to help people make that first step.
Superb. Yeah, that's awesome. But again, you mentioned about the kind of district heating aspect of ground source heat pumps as well. There's been some interesting employment of that within the UK already. Entire blocks of flats where there's a communal borehole and then little heat pumps in the individual flats, and that's been working great. But yeah, as you say, for individual households, our air source heat pump's absolutely brilliant, and we're saving considerable money on that, and the reliability is great. The house is always warm, the water's always hot. But back to to Scottish Power's approach to heat pump servicing and so on. Well, I know the answers to this one already because it wasn't your good selves who installed my heat pump, but your servicing that you do, is that open to people who have a heat pump that wasn't installed by Scottish Power? Can anyone with a heat pump sign up to your service plan?
Yeah, absolutely. It's really important to us that heat pump owners have the same access to kind of services as gas boiler owners do. So our service plan, which is provided by Domestic and General, the UK's leading specialist warranty provider, is open to customers no matter what the make, model, who installed it. We believe that that's the kind of access that heat pump owners need if we're going to kind of speed up the transition. Firstly, to point out, installers and manufacturers have long since been offering servicing for heat pumps. So we don't claim to be first to market. What we were first to market was as an energy company, offering that kind of nationwide service. What prompted us to do that is, as a heat pump owner myself, I shared your same frustration that I didn't know where to turn, and I didn't even really know where to start looking. How do you start that process? And at Scottish Power, we're really passionate and want to be at the forefront of the electrification of heat, because we believe that that's the best pathway to decarbonisation. We see our role as making it easier for customers to access heat pumps, and also what we want to do is to stimulate the market and create demand to help that transition from gas heating to low carbon technologies like heat pumps and heat networks. So we really saw this as a very fundamental offering that we wanted to put out in the market.
How widespread are these service plans? Are they niche parts of the country, small pockets, or is it genuinely UK wide?
Yeah, that's where, again, Scottish Power, working with domestic in general, we differentiate ourselves because we don't have postcode checkers. So our service is across Britain, and we have access through domestic in general to a host of highly trained engineers, which is kind of really essential to deliver that service that we do with domestic in general.
True. And you mentioned the highly trainedness of those engineers. Yeah. What training is offered by Scottish Power / domestic in general for their heat pump engineers?
So the training is really vital, as you say, because we want to satisfy customers that they're in safe hands, and that our engineers, when they turn up at your house, they understand your make and model. So they're highly trained in terms of the health and safety, the regulatory standards for installs, but they're also trained on installations, maintenance, and the servicing itself.
Excellent. I mean, it's a growing sector, isn't it? Yeah. So any heating engineer or someone who's coming to the end of their school, or whether it's and trying to decide what they want to do in their career, or anyone who fancies a career change and getting into the green side of things, I think it's fair to say that that's a job for life, the way the heat pumps are going. So
there's lots of good apprenticeships in that area as well.
Well, so, Speaking of which, if someone was looking for such an apprenticeship, do you know off the top of your head, very mean question here, where would you kind of look to get that kind of training?
Government website is a good place to start. There are lots of initiatives and lots of kind of apprenticeship schemes. And also check out local installers. Often you have local and slightly more regional and national installers that are constantly advertising for apprenticeships. So that's where I would start.
Super. Well, I've genuinely learned something there, so that's good to know. And of course, there's already an increase in demand for heat pumps today, but as we head towards 2030, for example, how many installations and services do you reckon, how many have you projected that you're going to be doing per year by 2030, and how are you going to handle that?
So right now, we're doing hundreds of services and installations a year. And really, we expect that to grow quite quickly through the 2020s. The UK government have set a quite ambitious target of 600,000 installs by 2028 for heat pumps, and that's air source, ground source, every type of flavour of heat pump, if you like. So we expect to be doing thousands. And as I say, we really need to build as an industry to meet that demand, because it's absolutely fundamental to our net zero ambitions, both as a company and as a kind of country.
And if I recall correctly, you've actually got quite a clever way of managing that demand as you grow and as you take on more staff at the moment. Am I right in saying that you predominantly focus on emergency repairs and so on in winter, and then the servicing over kind of spring through autumn? Is that correct?
Yeah. So servicing, we want the service to be as close as possible to your installation date, your annual installation date. And that's really important to maintain your warranty and validate it, and keep your heat pump working in good, smooth conditions.
Very true. And on that note, obviously you've said you've done hundreds of services, well, per annum so far. Generally, how happy have you found your customers' pumps? What's the feedback been?
Yeah, I think the demand for the product shows that paying monthly is something that customers are looking for.
Yep.
And, customers really are at the heart of everything that Scottish Power as a customer business is looking to do.
And hopefully in a future episode of Plug Life Television, I will cover my own heat pump, which has, as I said, it's completely smashed any expectations out of the park. My other half was particularly nervous about getting a heat pump for all the same reasons that people say, oh, is the water going to be hot enough? Is it going to be cold showers from here on in? No, it's not. The number of times that we've nearly scalded ourselves on the hot water tap is ridiculous. So for any prospective customers who are looking to sign up to this heat pump service plan from yourselves at Scottish Power and Domestic in general, how do you go about signing up to that?
Yeah, well, it's a really simple process, I'm glad to say. So if you visit scottishpower.co.uk, and under the Smart Heat and Living section, you'll find the annual service plan. And that has all the information that you need, the terms and conditions. And once the customer is signed up, you'll get a Scottish Power welcome letter that has the key information that you've given us and also our contact details. And we're at hand if you've got any questions from there on in. It's really simple.
Perfect. I suppose on to the important piece of all of this, which is the actual heat pump service itself. So starting right back with the basics, like what are the components of a heat pump? How does it work? What are the bits outside your house, the bits inside your house? What do they all do?
In terms of an air source heat pump, there are three main components. It's a lot more complicated than that, but let's focus on the three. So you've got your external unit, which effectively houses a large fan, and that absorbs the warmth from the air and then transfers it into a reverse refrigeration cycle. It's often said that a heat pump is just a fridge freezer in reverse, and that's pretty true, to be fair. So the external unit then passes that heat to a heat exchanger, and that heat exchanger will pass the heat into your hot water cylinder, which is a really key second component, and also your wet central heating system, which is a third component. It just repeats that reverse refrigeration cycle as many times as it needs to hit your set point temperature.
Superb. As you say, it is basically a big fridge, isn't it? And the heat exchanger, I understand that the refrigerant that's in that these days, it's not CFCs or anything like that, like you found in old fridges. In fact, Scott and Kevin were saying that my particular Valent unit's got propane in it.
Yes.
Which was interesting because they were saying that you're not allowed to use power tools in it in case there's been a leakage or something like that. But it was easy enough for them to take the lid off of it and examine the exchanger unit and make sure everything's fine. And they were also saying that because this is a sealed unit, the compressor, the pump, the heat exchanger, all of that is sealed. Yeah. You're easily looking at a couple of decades worth of lifespan out of that, at least. And the really interesting thing as well, to kind of go off piste a little bit, but this is a point that keeps coming up. People saying, oh yeah, heat pumps are expensive. Actually, no, it's the retrofitting to a house that has microbore pipework, which is generally not found anymore. They've gone for larger bore pipework, and even in gas boiler fitted newer premises now. Mine had microbore, so it had to be ripped out and replaced. That took the team a day to do. That's it was mega quick to do it. And what Scott and Kevin were saying was the actual heat pump unit itself, should that expire, that it's actually, you're just as well replacing the entire unit rather than replacing a specific component in it. And the cost of that unit is broadly on par with the cost of a new gas boiler. So if you plan to live in that house forever, then it's going to be the same cost as replacing a gas boiler when that heat pump does eventually expire, many, many, many years / decades down the line. So an important rebuttal point there. Genuinely, it's about the same cost as a gas boiler once it's all been installed.
As you say, it's the property modifications. And once you've done that, you've actually added value to your home as well.
Easily.
So it's a worthwhile investment.
Oh yeah. I mean, I'll tell you now, if I was looking for a new house, I would genuinely be looking for one with a heat pump. Because if there was a gas boiler in there, that'll be one of the first things to go. Can't be bothered with them. They are naff. Once you get a heat pump, you'll never go back. So that's all the components of the internal and the external heat pump system. And obviously all of those will be involved in the actual servicing of the service plan. So what does that entail? What gets done? What gets checked?
Yeah, well, when the engineer comes, they'll carry out a 26-point checklist. and that covers the main components of the external unit and the hot water cylinder inside. And that's just to make sure that it's maintaining a kind of efficient running conditions.
Excellent. And I suppose in terms of the very specific bits of that procedure, I remember Kevin and Scott, once they'd removed the lid from the external heat pump unit, they had a kind of special comb almost that they were taking to some fins at the back of the unit. So what are those fins, and why is it important to keep them straight and clean as well? They had it was basically a paintbrush that they were very deftly cleaning off the fins as well. So tell us more about the significance of that.
So maintaining a really good air supply to the external unit is really vital to its kind of ongoing kind of operation. So what they were doing was making sure that the air could circulate in, and that effectively feeds the warmth into the kind of heat pump system. So some of the other checklists are making sure there's no debris in front of the unit or behind the unit. So yeah, that's a really kind of key part. And it's something actually that, with maybe not using the paintbrush or the kind of the fin straightener, but something that we would actually recommend that customers do to make sure that there isn't anything obstructing the external unit in between service visits.
Yeah, in fact, again, Kevin and Scott had highlighted this, the number of heat pumps where they found that people have stored garden furniture behind the unit. So it's between the wall and the heat pump. And then they've said, oh no, the heat pump's not working that good. It's because you've just blocked the air supply into it. Yeah. So it can't breathe, it can't take heat out of that air.
And we see that also about people maybe kind of putting it in a box or putting obstructions around it to make it kind of disguise it. So I think it's just important if you're doing that you kind of follow manufacturer recommendations.
And in fact, in terms of disguising it, my heat pump was somewhat disguising itself. It was almost kind of David Attenborough-esque, the way that the kind of moss on the top of it was kind of returning to nature. So I was amazed actually. Kevin and Scott had brought with them this spray solution, which is literally just kind of like citrus spray. And that's mainly used on the fins, obviously, to keep them as clear as possible. But they took one look at the lid and went, we'll just scoosh that. And it was a seal it bang kind of moment, because I'd had a go at it with like fairy liquid or whatever, and it wasn't shifting it. And this stuff just straight away took it clean off. So it's now looking pristine again, having been exposed to the Scottish elements. It's important to point out that it still worked perfectly fine. It just looked a bit older than it actually was. But amazingly easy to keep clean with household citrus fruit squishy stuff. So perfect. So we've covered one of the main problems that might encounter with heat pumps, which is you've just blocked the air supply to the back of them. Are there any other kind of common problems or mistreatments that the engineers have encountered?
Air source heat pumps are actually very low maintenance, which is one of their actual selling points. But we would recommend an annual service visit, as I've said, to validate your warranty. And that's really important in case you run into problems further down the line. And I think most people in the UK are used to doing that with their gas boiler. One of the most common issues actually isn't the equipment or any kind of malfunction. It's that what we see is customers tinkering with their controls.
Right.
I totally get it. It's the first thing you want to do when you get a new heat pump. But what we would kind of generally recommend is that where possible, you stick to the installer settings. After all, they've configured it to run at the most optimal way, and they are generally the experts. However, what we would recommend is kind of setting a daily or weekly program that is kind of meeting your comfort requirements, your set temperature, when you want your hot water, and that's probably the single best thing that a heat pump owner can do. Also, if your heat pump has a holiday mode and you're going to be away for an extended period of time, don't turn it off, just set it on holiday mode, and that's the best way to save money when you're not in the house.
Yeah, exactly. So it's not heating it unnecessarily, but it's making sure that everything's still working. Because, I mean, there are important considerations like, for example, the need to superheat the hot water at least once a week to kill off Legionella, isn't there? So Legionella Tuesdays in our house, extra hot shower water. But I mean, that is, and I should point out that the water is perfectly toasty the rest of the week as well, of course. But again, you know, the installers, when they put it in, they kind of set it's almost like there's some curves for kind of coefficient of performance versus temperature and the way that they kind of set it up. I won't pretend to understand that fully. I don't know if you've got as much technical expertise as the engineers on that one, if you're able to explain any more.
Yeah, it gets very technical very quickly. There's kind of weather compensation, and there are different kind of settings that the installer can leave you with. And there you're best in the hands of an experienced, trained heat pump engineer, and they'll set it with consulting with you to the best possible efficiency for your home.
Tell us more about what households can get from Scottish Power.
Yeah, so at Scottish Power, alongside our heat solutions, we offer a really wide range of home energy solutions. So that includes solar panels, with and without home battery, which work really well with heat pumps. And we also offer home EV charging. I'd encourage anybody to have a look at the Scottish Power website and just reach out if you've got any questions. We're always happy to help.
So thank you again, Rob. This has been really informative. And if anything, it's basically been a video for me 6 months ago, as I was desperately trying to find a service plan for heat pumps. I could not find them anywhere. So thank you once again for the fact that you've actually put out that product, because having just had my own heat pump serviced prior to our chat today, I know that anyone who goes up for that plan is in very safe hands indeed. I was very impressed. So thank you once again.
Brilliant. Great chatting to you today, Ewan. Thanks.
Okay.